Volodymyr Zelenskyy went on live television and said something that stopped the room. Ukraine, he told his audience, has intelligence showing that Russia, the country currently bombing Ukrainian cities with Iranian-made drones, is now helping Iran locate American warships, aircraft, and military assets in the Middle East. Satellite data, surveillance information, targeting assistance, passed from Moscow to Tehran, allegedly to help Iran plan retaliatory strikes against U.S. forces in an active conflict zone. That was the first shock. The second came from Iran directly. An Iranian parliamentary security official stated publicly that Ukraine had now made itself a legitimate military target, not because Ukraine attacked Iran, but because Ukraine sent anti-drone experts to help Middle Eastern countries defend against Iranian drone strikes. In Tehran's calculation, that places Kyiv on the opposing side of the Middle East war. Ukraine is already fighting one war. It is now being formally threatened with a second by the same country whose drones Russia has been using to strike Ukrainian power grids and civilian infrastructure for over 2 years. The question nobody has answered yet: how did a conflict in the Middle East reach the point where a European capital is being threatened with Iranian strikes? Ukraine has been defending itself against Iranian drones for 2 years. Now Iran is threatening to send those same drones directly. That sentence should not be possible. And yet here we are. To understand how this happened, you need to understand two relationships that most Western coverage has treated as separate stories. The first is the Russia-Iran weapons pipeline. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Iran has supplied Moscow with Shahed series drones, slow, cheap, and effective enough to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses when launched in swarms. These are the same drones that have hit Ukrainian apartment buildings, hospitals, and power stations through 2 winters. Ukraine did not forget where those drones came from. The second relationship is newer and less reported: Ukraine's quiet military cooperation with Israel and several Gulf states during the current Middle East conflict. Zelensky's government dispatched anti-drone specialists to the region, personnel with direct, hard-won experience countering the exact Iranian drone systems that had been used against Ukrainian cities. That expertise, applied in the Middle East, has reportedly helped regional states intercept Iranian drone attacks, Tehran noticed. The moment Ukraine decided to share its counter-drone expertise in the Middle East, it inserted itself into a conflict it was not formally a party to. Iran's response was not immediate, it was calculated. And when the Iranian parliamentary security official made his statement designating Ukraine a potential military target, he was not speaking impulsively. He was describing a position that had already been formed. 2 wars, 2 drone supply chains, one country caught in the intersection of both. Ukraine shared what it knew to help others survive. Iran has now formally declared that knowledge made Ukraine a target. 1 decision, 2 consequences. The central conflict in this story is not a military confrontation, not yet. It is an intelligence revelation with the potential to reshape 3 simultaneous crises at once. Zelensky's on-air statement was specific. Ukraine's intelligence indicates Russia is providing Iran with data on the locations of U.S. military assets in the Middle East, warships, aircraft, and other force components operating in an active conflict zone. The information is believed to be derived from Russian satellite and surveillance capabilities. The alleged purpose? To help Iran plan retaliatory strikes against U.S. forces with greater precision. If accurate, this is not a peripheral arms deal. It is direct intelligence cooperation between Russia and Iran in an active conflict against American military assets. The Kremlin did not confirm the allegations. It also did not deny them. Some Western officials have been cautious, noting that the full extent of Russia's involvement remains unclear, but disputed intelligence in a live conflict zone carries its own weight, because the countries making targeting decisions cannot afford to wait for certainty. Here is the unexpected complication. The same drones Russia used to strike Ukrainian cities were manufactured in Iran. The same country now threatening Ukraine is the same country that armed Ukraine's enemy, and the expertise Ukraine developed defending against those drones is now the reason Iran is threatening Ukraine directly. Ukraine built its counter-drone knowledge through necessity. Through 2 winters of intercepting Iranian-made weapons over its own cities. It then shared that knowledge with partners in the Middle East. Iran's response is to treat that knowledge transfer as a declaration of war. Ukraine is now formally threatened by Iran, which is the drone supplier for Russia, which is allegedly providing Iran with intelligence on U.S. military targets, while the United States is fighting Iran in the Middle East and Ukraine is fighting Russia in Europe. These are no longer separate files on separate desks. What you've just heard is complicated enough. But the reason this story actually matters, the part that changes the strategic picture for every country involved, is something the headlines haven't fully spelled out yet. For 2 years, the dominant Western framing of the Ukraine war treated Iran as a supporting detail. Russia was the principal, Iran was a supplier. That framing just changed. When Zelenskyy announced the intelligence, the initial skeptical Western reaction was that this was a Ukrainian information operation, Kyiv drawing attention to Russian alliances at a moment when U.S. focus is on the Middle East. Then Iran's own officials spoke. A legitimate military target, delivered through Tehran's official channels. That is not a Ukrainian information operation. The deepest consequence is what this does to Ukraine's strategic position and to the Western coalition. Ukraine is formally threatened by Iran. Iran supplies drones to Russia. Russia allegedly shares intelligence with Iran on U.S. targets. The United States is fighting Iran. Ukraine is fighting Russia. Every decision in the Middle East now has a potential echo in Eastern Europe. Every decision in Eastern Europe now has a potential consequence for the Middle East theater. Zelensky's choice in whether to continue sharing counter-drone expertise with Middle Eastern partners under Iranian threat is not just a Ukrainian decision. It has implications for the entire network of alliances surrounding both conflicts. He has not announced any change in policy. Ukraine's anti-drone cooperation continues. Iran noticed. The connections are now visible. But there's one thread left, the one that explains why this particular moment is the point where the two wars stopped being separate. Ukraine went into the Middle East conflict quietly. No announcement, no headlines. Anti-drone specialists deployed, expertise transferred, Iranian attack drones intercepted by people who had learned to intercept them over Kyiv and Kharkiv. Iran made it front page. The Iranian official's statement formally connected the two wars in public. Now every government has to process a map that includes both theaters simultaneously. The Kremlin's silence on the intelligence sharing allegations is its own kind of statement. Russia does not deny capabilities it actually possesses. Refusing to address the specific allegation that it shared targeting data on U.S. military assets with Iran is not the same as a denial. One thread this story leaves open. What happens to the Russia-Iran-Ukraine triangle if the Middle East conflict continues to escalate? Iran, under further U.S. military pressure, may have less capacity to threaten Ukraine directly. Or it may decide that expanding the scope of the conflict, formally drawing in a European front, is precisely the kind of pressure it needs to apply. Ukraine has been defending against Iranian drones for 2 years. The question of whether it will now have to defend against Iranian missiles aimed directly at Kyiv, not at American ships, has not been answered. It has only been asked. This story is still developing across 3 simultaneous fronts. If you want analysis that tracks those intersections instead of covering each conflict in isolation, subscribe. And leave a comment. Do you think Ukraine was right to share its counter-drone expertise in the Middle East, knowing it could make Ukraine a target? Or was that a strategic miscalculation? Russia's role in this situation, as drone supplier, alleged intelligence provider, and Ukraine's primary military adversary, is about to become a much bigger part of the international conversation. That analysis is next.